Good morning.
Hi, Arrow.
How are you guys doing
Arrow.
today? Oh, my goodness sakes. Listen to all that energy this morning.
We are totally pumped.
Yes, we are here and we're loving it.
Well, you have every reason in the world to be totally pumped up, because what I love about this book, JFK Jr., An Intimate Oral Biography, is the fact that we cannot forget about the past. In order for this moment of now to happen, things happened before we got here. And I'm so glad that you had the confidence and the courage to say, hey, look, we can't leave this out.
Thank you so much. That's lovely. Thank you. Yeah, we really wanted to paint a human portrait of John and also, make sure that he wasn't forgotten. That was the most important thing.
It's really interesting when you say you wanted to do a human portrait. I mean, I'm one of those guilty ones. The National Enquirer, People Magazine, and to hold this book and to read this book, it's like, okay, they're setting me straight.
That's great to hear. The form of the book is an oral biography, so it's all the many, many different people that John met throughout his life, over 200 people, and woven together almost as if they're having a conversation about John.
He comes across inside the book as just being somebody that is everyday, but yet so many people called him the prince. He was our prince in America.
Yeah, I think he had he just handled his fame and his family name and his connection to American history with such grace. And I think that was the thing that set him apart.
One of the things I'll never forget, and I think this is because this is how JFK Jr. got into our hearts, is that I know where I was when news came that something wasn't right. And I know what I did. I have this beautiful painting in my house of a sunset. And every time I look at it, I think of this guy that was such a huge part of my life. But I didn't get to know him. I don't know. I didn't know who he was, but yet he was so big in our life.
Yeah, there was an emotional connection to John from, I would argue, from the time he was born. And I think that America sort of embraced him and was watching him and was watching out for him in some ways because he lost his father so young. And he was, he was just this person that people were hopeful about. He inspired hope.
There was just this connection to him. And I think that's what we discovered over and over again, through our book, that whether you met him or not, we felt connected.
Speaking of connected, the audio version of this book, the way that you have interweaved so many different voices in this, and Rosemarie, you're part of this. I mean, you talk about a connection. It's when I'm driving in the car, it's almost like, oh my God, I'm right here with these thoughts.
Oh, that's great. That's excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I think that was really the only way to do this book, to sort of have it seem like people throughout his life got together in a room and were just sharing memories.
How did it come to you? Because I mean, something like this is so heavy, and you're always asking that question of, does anybody really want this? Because marketing is marketing.
Yeah, I think what it was that enough time had passed.
25 years. That
people felt like they were celebrating him rather than mourning him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and right, we didn't want him to be forgotten, and it was amazing. Like as we spoke to people, more memories would come forth, and then sometimes that would give you an idea of what to ask the next person,
or who else to interview, or who else to reach out to.
Mm-hmm.
See, and that's going to be very interesting, because once people listen to this in Audible, or if they even pick up this book and they read it, they're going to ask questions as well. So I would love to hear what real people who experienced his life through the pages of stories are going to be affected by this book. I want to hear their stories as well.
That reminds me, somebody just said to us off the cuff, like John's favorite restaurant was El Teddy's. So then Rose and I are like, we got to find a waitress from El Teddy's who waited on John. And we found his favorite waitress.
His favorite hostess at El Teddy's, and we interviewed her.
Yes.
Let's be honest here, okay? I mean, when he fell in love, for so many women, John was their fantasy. I mean, it was like, okay, now do we step back and watch him fall in love, or was like, no, this is going to be like a daytime soap. No, he can't have her.
Oh, I loved watching him fall. I mean, we loved it. These beautiful couples, and I mean, I think I wanted John to be in love. Like, what a beautiful love stories.
Yeah.
I think it was twofold for the rest of the country and the rest of the world. They wanted him to be in love, but as long as it was with them.
And the fashion show. How many lives changed because of that couple?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's Carolyn. That's all Carolyn. I mean, she changed his entire look.
I mean, like, even when I look at photos of them now, I'm like, nobody looked like them. I mean, yes, they were, of course, incredibly genetically blessed, but like, they were just like a certain coolness and nonchalance about them.
What did you learn from everybody sharing their stories? Because you got to listen to their pitch, volume, and tone. And that means so much to me because I'm an emotional person. I want to hear people speak.
I guess what I would say, like, every once in a while there would be a certain phrase that would sort of ring in our heads. And I remember when I spoke to a man in India that John had lived with for 3 weeks, he called him a wounded seeker of truth. And I just thought, oh, how interesting, right? Like, there's sort of this trauma that he's sort of lives with his entire life, and yet he's a seeker and he's seeking. So there were certain phrases like that that sort of rang true for us.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I found that I sort of knew these people, but when we put the whole thing together, it was like, wow, he really had friends that he kept all the way from grade school throughout his entire life. And not just like a friend on Facebook. Like, they talked, they got together, they saw each other. The people in his life, they really stayed with him, and he stayed with them. And there's a story in the book about a friend of his when he was People Magazine, Sexiest Man Alive. Yep. And she said, we're never going to see you anymore. You're going to make all these new friends, and you're going to be, now you're really famous. And he said, Sasha, I don't make new friends.
There's such a myth about him in the way that Lynyrd Skynyrd was always about a myth, and so was Led Zeppelin. I always thought of him as being a rock star because you could take 10 people who had their own personal experiences about JFK Jr., and we would all have different stories.
And I think that's exactly what makes the book so rich and so interesting, is that the different stories from different people, all walks of life, and all phases of his life, from grade school to high school, collegiate, George, the DA's office. Yep. It's really I think it's a really rich portrait.
Rosemarie, you worked with him. Was he that humble? Because in my heart, I believe he was more than humble, that he was down to earth every day. I'm just this guy who happens to be in this moment.
He absolutely was. And you know what was interesting about that is he reminded other people of the same. Good. He used to always say, nothing is as good or as bad as it seems in the moment. So he had this sort of tempered way of dealing with things. But I think that, that was what was so unique about him. That was what was so unique about his celebrity. And in the book, we talk to Garth Brooks, and he says, he wore his life right in front of you. Yep.
Wow. 10 minutes with you is not enough. But I tell you what, I've got your book and I've got Audible. And that right there is just going to continue to inspire and influence so many of us because we get to know now. We get to know the truth. I can't thank you enough for this book.
Oh, thank you,
Arrow. It was a pleasure talking to you. Yeah. What a great chat. Thank you.
You be brilliant today, okay?
All right.
You too.
Bye, Arrow.